Well, the reason a farm like this is what one could say required is that it teaches history, and we can't really go on in the future unless we know where we've come from. If you can't, learning from the past is something essential to knowing of the future. We have great models to live up to, you might say. What an American is what makes America great, and we can't know what an American is unless we know where America came from. So that would be why a farm such as this, which teaches American ideals and American history from the grounds up, you might say, not by reading about it in a book, but actually seeing it, living it, and understanding of what makes an American. That's what we portray here on this farm, and that's what makes farms like these important.
It's a great place to be, a lot of fun, and I enjoy working here.
On to the musket. Now, what do you suppose might happen if, oh, I say I run out of ammunition, my commander orders a bayonet charge, I fix my bayonet?
No, these ones aren't made out of iron. These are actually made of a little bit cheaper metal cam, called aluminum, which is not really a material. They did have aluminum, but it was thought to be as rare as gold. All right, yes, cool. But yeah, these ones are not iron.
We're a bit of a hybrid between conventional agriculture, small farms, family farms, and educational establishment. We have a little of both. We do raise somewhere on the order of 4,000 to 5,000 fruit trees, and we raise sweet corn and pumpkins and various row crops, strawberries and raspberries and so forth. But we don't really, nor would we ever think that we could actually provide a living for the number of people that we actually do just by selling produce. So we have the challenges of dealing with Mother Nature and bringing in a crop and trying to sell it. But we really mix that with our education products, which are Revolutionary War reenacting and Civil War living history and living history balls and dinners and that sort of thing. So our primary income really is using the backdrop of a farm to educate kids about the Revolutionary War. And people ask, well, what does farming have to do with war reenactments? And I think maybe the easiest way to illustrate the connection. Years ago, I was reading some transactions between living historians online, and they were Civil War reenactors, and they were talking about various places they had reenacted the Civil War. And one of them said that he knew he had hit a new low when he had flanked the baseball diamond for the 5th time. Because reenactments that take place in places in parks or in near town halls, that sort of thing, or in suburban environments, of course, don't really look like history because battles took place on farms. I mean, every major battle of American history on continental soil was really on a farm. Bunker Hill was, Breeds Hill was a farmer's pasture. Gettysburg was farm company and farm country, and Saratoga was farm country, and really, major American battles took place on farms. So we early on agreed to do Civil War reenacting because they looked at our farm, at the landscape of it, the breadth of it, and they said this would be the perfect place to reenact a battle from the Civil War. And even people like Steven Spielberg agreed and did movies like Amistad here, and we did lots of work for the History Channel and Discovery Channel and that sort of thing. So farming and education are a good mix for us.
And small farms like this are so beneficial. We just can't go without them. We need them. Our farm here with its 700 some acres is a great place. People can bring their kids up. They can see some open space. They can see what it's like to pick an apple or pick a raspberry or see corn growing in the field or hay. It's just so important not to have mega farm where you have thousands of acres with machinery on it. Here you'll see some old-fashioned tractors, but you're as likely to see someone out with a scythe cutting wheat in the fall. And people need to know what our history is, where our background, where food really comes from. It's not just from the grocery store or from a great big farm. That what we do here is just very essential, and I think people get a big kick out of coming up here. I know my family members like to come up here many times during the year and pick apples or pick raspberries and just enjoy the ambiance of being out in the fresh air under the trees, up a little cooler from the cities down below. So it's really important that we keep these small farms.
We do a large variety of many activities out here at the farm to help supplement all the growth of the apples and vegetables and produce. If we were just to sell the produce alone, we'd have a very difficult time making a living. So we supplement that with programs like we show kids how to make butter, do cider pressing. You can come out, press your own gallon of apple cider, or even pumpkin cider in October.
Something happened with the mic.
Uh-oh.
We made a
Did I
static
tap
noise.
it?
Is it okay?
Seems fine on my side.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you repeat that part, that last sentence?
Mm-hmm. All right. Some of the other activities, you can even come out and press your, let me start that. You can even come out and press your own apple cider. In October, we even do a little bit of pumpkin cider. You can go out, pick yourself, bring it over to the cider press and just throw it in and have some fun. So we make most of our revenue off of these side programs, not actually off the produce. It's very difficult on a farm in America to make a living by selling produce alone, especially for a medium-sized farm. If you're a very small farm, you don't have much cost in maintenance and caring for the ground, so you can barely squeeze by just selling produce. Or if you're an incredibly large farm, you can automate things so much and use heavy equipment and actually make a profit, although it's still quite difficult without government subsidies. In a farm this size, where what we work is about 55 acres, it's quite difficult because it's a very large area to maintain, but there's not very much money in the produce itself. We actually, one of the things that we do here is we do U-Pick programs. Rather than us spending money on workers to go out and pick in the fields, we actually have customers come and pay us so that they can go pick. So during the fall, for a few months, we'll make very large amounts of money for a few days of a week for maybe 2 to 3 months. Then the rest of the year, we're very, very slow. And then in the summertime, we can produce large amounts of produce, fresh watermelon, strawberries, zucchini, but those are also very hard to sell for any type of profit. So what we're able to do is open those up to U-Pick programs. But really our largest money generator is from school field trips and dinner events. We can see between 500 and 700 school children every day, each coming and paying an admission and really helping to keep this farm alive. It's actually primarily our Revolutionary War adventure program that keeps all of this farm open and operational, and it pretty much pays for all our apple trees, which we lose a large amount of money on each year. But it's profitable for us to put in all those trees to really make this wonderful, beautiful farm atmosphere that's disappearing in America, and we're able to sell that to the public to keep this farm open. The most difficult part at working at a small farm like this is actually trying to get customers an income year-round. And what we do for that is a lot of the school programs, dinner programs, and a lot of supplemental activities. And a farm, what has the tendency to happen is, let's say in the fall time, we'll have all our apples come ripe, and for 4 to 6 weeks we do great business every day because everyone wants to come and get apples. And then for the rest of the year, we don't have any crops, so there's no means for income whatsoever. So what we've done is that's why we've created all these secondary programs so we can have income year-round. Now we still have a very difficult time with the summer. We've managed to get a lot of school tours going that have kind of built from nothing. Jim Riley's built up all these school tours, and so we have just amazing amounts of kids come through here. About 1/5 of all kids in Southern California, 5th graders, come through our Revolutionary War program. But the summertime, school gets out, and then we once again have the problem of no business. And we've tried to do lots of different programs, but because it's so hot during the summertime also, people don't want to come up and walk around a large farm up in the hills, even though it is cooler up here in the mountains. So we have a lot of trouble with that. Now what we're currently trying to do is we're trying to expand a lot of our public programs to have more of a year-round crowd. We're introducing more shows like an old-time variety show and some historical reviews to have some evening programs that people can come cool down and relax at. And we're also adding about 30 new buildings in very concentrated areas. We're trying to make recreations of colonial villages and Old West villages that aren't really touristy styled villages, but actually recreations of old villages. So it's and we'll be adding a lot of shops to that. We'll be doing potters and weavers and a blacksmith shop, old bank barns, and we'll have the horses pulling the carriage to really make an authentic experience. So you feel you're 100 years in the past or 200 years in the past. And we want those programs to start generating other programs. We also would like to start camp programs by opening bunkhouses and having overnight accommodations available. For most of Oak Glen, they have the type of fall revenue. They get most of the revenue in the fall, then are closed year-round, except for a few camp programs which actually are very, very busy during the summer, which is our dead time. So what we're trying to do is we're actually trying to open some camp facilities so that we can have more summer revenue. One of our biggest dreams here is we one day hope to create a colonial village actually out in the backwoods of our property here. We have about 760 acre total, and we think it would be a really great experience if you could go out, take a horse and carriage, be completely in costume, go out to a colonial village and actually stay there for 2 weeks, learn how to blacksmith, how to cook, how to prepare your own food that you gather from the fields, and actually experience what it was like to live 200 years ago. So, and all those different programs work together to help us to be able to keep this place open. What happens mainly nowadays in California and other places is it's so expensive to be a farmer and so unprofitable. Where a piece of land like this, 760 acres, we could sell it for millions of dollars for tract homes or other developments, but we really want to preserve this kind of pristine nature and orchards and American history. So we're able to do that here through all these different programs which all work together to make this place possible.
It's the meat locker because the deer hang out up there. There's a lot of acorns, and acorns are like candy to the deer. He said if we get in trouble, we need something to eat, we just go up there and sit by an oak tree and wait till some venison walks by. And we would cut and package hundreds of pounds of venison and sell it down the hill in Redlands and in Yucaipa, San Bernardino, to get by during the 30s when times were so tough. We would be taking truckloads of, it looked like apple cider to the Elks Club, but it was truly bonded whiskey. And we got through the rough periods that way. If we lost our apple crop because of freezing or hail, then we would depend on our cattle herd. We used to raise a few hundred head of cattle here every year as well. That's how we get by. My great-grandpa came here in 1880. He captured 3,500 acres up here for $50. A saddle, a pig, a chicken, and a jug of whiskey, so the story goes. That big mountain peak up there is named after him, Wilshire Peak. We had this whole side of the glen. There was only one other family living up here on the other side of the glen. They were named Parrish. And if there was more kids on the other side of the hill, they'd put the schoolhouse on skids. They'd drag it over to the other side of the hill. So the last time they drug it over here to this side of the hill, my grandpa donated 2 acres and built them a rock schoolhouse so they couldn't move it anymore. Now his kids could get home to work a lot faster than walking all the way back from the Parrish side of the mountain. It started out in Santa Monica and a truck farming down there off the river, and a family named Sepulveda moved in upstream of us to cut the water off. So we'd move upstream of Sepulveda, and then they'd move upstream of us, till he finally got tired of it. He rode clear to the top of the water, said now the only thing that can get above us is mountain goats.
So one of the challenges of being a living history farm is though we are an actual apple farm and do produce and sell apples, we don't make enough on that alone to survive necessarily. So we do our living history presentations and various activities. One of my personal favorites is the dancings, the dances and balls and such that we do. Such as coming up now in September, we have our Blue-Gray Ball to take place in about 1860, and it's one of our costume events, costume required events, where everyone, guests and staff included, are dressed up in the 1880s or 1860s time period. We have our Berry Pickers Ball, we have our night before Mother's Day and night before Father's Day dinner and dance. We have, let's see, our Legend of Sleepy Hollow dinner and dance. We have our Christmas Carol and various other ones that aren't coming to mind as of right now. But as I said, my personal favorite on that is when we actually do the dances. Each of our dinners include a large meal with several different courses included on that, depending on the exact style of dinner that it is. And we'll have various activities, but one that's almost guaranteed is the dancing. And I'm one of the dance masters here at the farm, so I have the pleasure of teaching and leading a lot of the different dances. We do Virginia Reel, the Ball of Yarn, Patty Cake Polka, Yankee Doodle, the Black Nag, and countless other ones that we'll be teaching through the different dinners and such, and it's a whole lot of fun.
I had to shoot a commercial with that goat. That went very badly for you, didn't it? I can get you today. Step lively, move along.
Well, American battle history really doesn't take place in municipal parks with neat manicured lawns and little blacktop trails. It really occurred on farms, and so we were approached years ago by some Civil War reenactors to do battle reenactments, and it was a perfect environment to reenact things like Gettysburg and the Revolutionary era Saratoga and Bunker Hill, Breeds Hill, because that's all farm country. And so when you wonder what it's like to run a small farm, we really don't run a small farm. We do raise crops, and we use them as loss leaders to educate people about farming and about American history. So we're a very unconventional small farm as small farms go. How do we make it? We basically are a trial and error farm in some ways. We try lots of different things. We do living history dinners where we'll bring up Civil War reenactors, and everybody is dressed in antebellum clothing, and we have Civil War brass bands, and our guests pay to be part of a dinner in the past. So that's one of our more popular programs. We have Sleepy Hollow, which is a celebration of Washington Irving's timeless tale of romance and hijinks, and not Tim Burton's weird, perverted, strange, psychotic, soul-desiccating version of the story. We try to bring people into the past, into the simplicity of the past, and we find that our customers who are trapped in suburban and urban environments like to be out in a place where there are really no fences, and there's lots of neatly laid out orchards and pumpkin fields, and you want me to repeat that?
Yeah, because I got the noise of them going down.
Well, we find that our customers like being in open spaces where there's neatly laid out orchards and pumpkin fields and very few fences, and they're willing to pay for those spaces by, buying dinner from us or buying Americana. I mean, quill and ink sets and paper and looms and that sort of thing, and period clothing, but mostly I think what our mainstay has been is reenacting the Revolutionary War for school children. And out here in California, there's not very much Revolutionary War living history. Even in the reenacting community, there's not very many reenactors who who take that as their hobby, as their era, and so we found that there was an open market for telling the story of the 18th century in America. And if you ask a child today whether they'd rather be tried by a judge or a jury, oftentimes, most of the time, they're going to say they're instinctively going to say a judge. But constitutional history tells us that the jury is the last barrier against a bad law, and many Americans, fought and died for those rights, and we find that it's an engaging way in this country setting to teach those rights, because so when we were going through our CUP battle, someone asked us if we could tell the story of the Revolutionary War without muskets, and one of our employees had the presence of mind to say that we didn't get our country by asking nicely, and that drama is worth reliving and re-experiencing. We know that the story of English liberty throughout history is a story of a fight. It's the story of the gentry telling the nobility, "You will not take our goods from us without our consent. You will not take our right to worship from us. We will be burned at the stake rather than to worship as you tell us to." And it's a whole story of a long fight. I mean, Charles I and Cromwell and George III, who was a spoiled brat on the throne, who thought he deserved the vassal slavery of his American subjects, and when you compare his excesses of power, though, and you look at the present day, and you say, Hugo Chavez is shutting down the opposition press in Venezuela. Castro, the old crippled tyrant, was an enemy of freedom of worship in his country. The world is just full of dictators and of people who've been willing to abuse the rights of their people. And so we never tire of telling new generations that they live in a country where they have the right to worship as they choose, where they can speak their minds, where they can be tried by a jury. And not only should they expect these rights, but they should demand them. So, and you really can't teach that without showing the struggle of how they were achieved. And so we found that there's really no end to the audience for that message. People, we ran into an interesting, actually aggravating aspect of California land use policy out here at Riley's Farm in Oak Glen, in that we found out that everybody wants more places for kids and families. They want more parks, they want more schools, they want more, in our case, living history venues. They want all that, but they don't want them next to where they live. It's the not in my backyard syndrome, the NIMBY syndrome. And what we found up here in Oak Glen was that there are a lot of folks who buy 2 or 3 acres of land, and they think they've bought the rights to 3,000 or 4,000 acres of solitude. So somebody opens up a camp for kids next to them, and their impulse is to try and shut them down. And I've always thought, if you love a field next to you, if you love that beautiful field full of wildflowers next to you, and you've bought your home and you want to enjoy that field of wildflowers, but it doesn't happen to be yours, maybe you ought to buy that field of wildflowers so that you can preserve it. But don't tell the fellow who owns that field of wildflowers that they've got to somehow keep it for your personal enjoyment. And we run into that. We ran a lot into our struggle in establishing a living history farm for families, because when you open up a farm like this to the public, you create an attraction. There might be as many as 10 or 12 buses full of school kids that come up here in a day. And if you talk about an environmentally sensitive way of bringing people to Oak Glen, a school bus is about as good as they get. I mean, you put everybody in one vehicle, you drive them up the hill. You don't create a Disneyland monstrosity of a whole parking lot full of cars. And so we felt it was a pretty environmentally sensitive and a culturally sensitive thing to do, because we were educating kids, we're paying for the farm, and we thought it was win-win. But there kind of a small cadre of people who, competing business people and neighbors who really don't like people, truth be told. I didn't want anybody next to them. So, but fortunately, I think that the powers that be saw the wisdom of our project, and we won unanimously. And now we face the challenge of going on with this original vision that we all fell in love with as a family 20 years ago. And no one has written the book, really the textbook, on how to run a living history farm or how to run a living history venue. My personal feeling is that if you look around the country and you see places that preserve American history, they tend to be run by docents, by nonprofit museums. And a lot of them are great, but a lot of docents and a lot of nonprofits don't have the impulse to please the customer the way a for-profit business does. And we're very proud of the fact that we're a small family business, we're for-profit, and that means that all of our staff is trained to love and respect the guests, to appreciate them as members of their family. So,
yeah, that's good.
I get a little emotional because we fought pretty hard for the farm. And there's very few people who see it, who don't express their appreciation for it. To everyone up here in Oak Glen who attempts to open their place to the public. But it's a very daunting thing. I mean, one person trips and breaks her leg, and you have to deal with personal injury and attorneys. You have to deal with regulation of a sort that's just frankly obscene in California. I mean, when we were applying for our permits, one of the potential requirements was a visual impact study. And a visual impact study is, you pay some civil engineer out of college to drop an expensive $8,000 or $9,000 study on how your project was going to visually impact the community. And I told him, I said, that's nonsense. This is a barley field. This is a New England meeting house. This is a cider barn. I'm not going to do a visual impact study so that I can line the pockets of some civil engineer and make the bureaucracy happy, And I think that there's a lot of regulation that has merit. I mean, certainly fire safety and public health for serving food and so forth. But there's a lot of hyper regulation in California, and I don't think it has anything to do at all with public safety. It has something to do with giving the bureaucracy something to do. And giving a patronage system to politicians who want to give away taxpayers' money to keep their constituency happy. So I think that we're always up against that. There's always a fight, I think, between good and evil. We represent good. The other side is evil as far as I'm concerned. And I don't care who knows it.